Peace and blessings. I just like to remind everyone that everything that we think we know, has come from something in creation, right? It comes from examining something in creation. We learn through observation, we learn through hearing, we learn through touch, but we can only do that based on what has already been created. So this way of teaching that I'm sharing with you it's based on research, studying, not just studying the creation as it is, but studying the scholars that have studied the creation, and then looking to see where do we see this today in everyday life. So in essence, to study the creation is to have a blueprint of life. Most of us don't know that. Most of us don't even believe in that. But, we believe it when someone creates an airplane or when somebody creates something for us to use. But they got it from somewhere, so it's really easy to reap the benefits. So what I like to do with my channel is have you put your thinking cap on. Let's take a second look. This particular episode is episode 1. We're going to be talking about sheep behavior. The sheep it's an animal. It's a sign that God has created, like everything else in creation, for man to take a look at and examine. One thing that we know from studying is that the best characteristics found in animals, plants, and other creation by God is found in the human being, is to be the elevated human being that we are. We take from those examples, the best examples that we can find, and we are to elevate them as an advanced, more sophisticated creation. That's what we're supposed to do. But when we don't do that and we become less than what we were created to become, then we become like the animals. And what's so interesting is that we find our destiny very similar to theirs. So that's just kind of long and short about what my channel is about. I hope you subscribe. Subscribe right now. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe right now. I would appreciate that. But we're going to get right into it. So first, I'm going to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to be touching on in these different episodes about the sheep. So number 1, this is part of the herded group, right? There are different types of herds. You have all different types of cattle, different things like that. But there's some very specific things about the sheep to know in terms of herded life. So with sheep, if you're looking at human characteristics, these are people that behave in the same way, or all behave as they are directed, right? People that need to be guided and are obedient and loyal, but meaning they're obedient, right? Meaning they don't act with aggression. They don't show resistance. So think of a group of people, right, that behave this way. That's one episode we're going to do. The obedient consumer. Why do I say that? So this is to open up your mind so you can be with me. Sheep are consumers, right? This is where it's going. You may not have thought about this, but this is where it's going to click for you. They're consumers of the land. So if you switch that over and you start thinking about human character, who are these people? Who is this obedient, loyal group that's also a consumer in the land, right? Obedient consumer. And with consumption comes regulation. So not only are they the consumer, right, consumers of what's in the land, they regulate what becomes popular, what moves, what grows, and when, right? So that's something very interesting to hold on to while we're looking at this character in human behavior. This idea of sheep is also symbolic of charity. The excess, charitable excess, right? We'll get to that. What is left over? Your charity, your excess, right? Beyond what you need. So where do we see that today? We'll talk about it and its relevance to people who are like this. This is another characteristic, another episode. People who are like this are the easiest people to target and redirect. So people that have this behavior of obedience and loyalty, and are consumers, right? They are the easiest people to target, right? So we know there's definitely a lot of blessings and good things about having the sheep nature. It's a nature we should try to have, But obviously, it needs protection, and that's why there is such thing as the sheep herder. This is a sign. This is a picture that God has given us. Um, then what happens to this type of personality? What happens when these personalities consume where they don't belong? We have some modern day examples of this happening. We're going to get into it and we're going to talk about it. So you're going to want to subscribe, and you're going to want to hear this. This is going to get good. I spent a lot of time studying, like I said, researching different scholars, researching different scriptures, researching the internet, going back in time, and taking a look at where I see it. And I've seen some very interesting connections. So, this is going to be good. This is going to really expand your imagination as well. So, this obedient group of consumers, right? Where do we see it in human characteristics? Again, people that behave as they are directed and do not show aggression, right? And not like some of the other herded animals and consumers that regulate the land. We're specifically talking about people with this specific behavior, the loyal and obedient consumer. Right. So as I said, they actually regulate. Those of us that are like this, we have these groups, large groups of loyal people that consume, right? We regulate what is going to grow in society and when it's going to grow. That's what makes this so powerful. So, when we think of sheep, we think of, someone who's shy and, meager and, maybe someone who doesn't have much power. But actually, this is what's so ironic, is that this group has more power than anyone. When you have a group of loyal people, it doesn't get more powerful than that in terms of moving things and shaking things up. One of the things that the downside is that the leadership. So this is going to be consumption based on where someone guides them or sends them, right? So of course, the downside is that whatever's guiding you isn't right, then you may end up being led off a cliff. But the other thing about this particular group, and think about where you see it in society, is that they like to be with the flock, right? They like to stay with what's popular, and with that can come peer pressure for people that have this nature. But popularity, that level of pressure, it's a problem when you have this type of mentality. It can be a problem. You want to belong to a family, you want to belong to a group, and that can end up being the wrong group, right? But this nature of wanting to belong to a group is a good nature. But again, this specific type of personality has to be influenced by leadership. So naturally, you can be led into the wrong group. So we're not sheep. Let's not get confused. We're not sheep. We're supposed to be elevated beyond just having this nature, and we're not supposed to have our heads down, consuming without looking up. That's another interesting thing about the sheep. It's not just the consumer. It's not just this group flock mentality, this herd mentality. You're talking about consuming head down, and not knowing when to look up. And this nature, when you're not conscious, it can become natural. It can become a natural thing that you do, and it can become a regular behavior for you. Sheep are grazers. They're not browsers. So grazers, right? So they eat what's in front of them, basically what is given to them to eat. And this characteristic of consuming head down and just eating what's right in front of you like that, it makes you a target. It makes you a target for predators. And if you haven't listened to the discussion, the episodes on predatory behavior and the wolf, you may want to check that out, because I think we could all agree that sheep is probably the favorite food for the wolf. The person that has this behavior would be a prime cut of choice for someone who's predatory, right? But, where do we see that? All of those of us that take in this information from social media and, gossip and just, things that are put in front of us every time we turn on a device, it doesn't require a lot of thinking. So you're just kind of ingesting, you're ingesting what's being put in front of you, unlike someone who would be more of a browser, which is more the behavior of the goat. And we'll get to the goat. That's the next one we're going to do. It's so interesting. Unlike that, you're consuming what is pretty much being put in front of you. And that, kind of makes you fall into the whole group consensus thing and going with it and becoming the perfect lunch for someone who is predatory, whether it's a business, it's a product that someone's selling, or just to get you to do anything that they want you to do. Another thing about sheep behavior is that sheep are vegetarians, right? They're vegetarians. And I thought this was very interesting to research. This is someone that eats what's put right in front of them from the earth, right? So you have vegetarians, you have meat eaters. So what comes out of the earth, right? So the vegetarian eats what comes out of the land produced as a result of the earth, while the meat eater eats what has to be observed and captured and is more difficult to digest. Two different things. So if you're following me with this metaphor, social media, movies, television, these things like this that are kind of sitting there, pre-made for us to just take a look at. How much of that are you consuming? How much of that are you consuming opposed to what you need to pick and choose from, think about, right? Digest. How much, so we have the example of food, eating fruits, eating vegetables, eating meats. But there is another level of understanding to this. There's an intellectual level of understanding to this. And it matches what, you have these two coexisting, what's the word I'm looking for? Correlating existences. And it matches. It matches if you study and research it. So how much of that are you taking in that's just kind of readily there, sitting there waiting for you to consume versus, again, what you're actually browsing through, taking time to digest and get something out of that you can build, that builds muscle for you in your life, right? So it seems like the appropriate food for someone with this behavior, someone who is just obedient, loyal, just tell me what to do and I will do it. So it matches, right? It matches. But naturally, obedience is only good when you have a good leader, someone that is guiding you, right? Hence the shepherd. So if you pair someone who's loyal and obedient with someone who's actually trustworthy, someone who has excellent leadership, then you're going to have the best example, the very best example, even if it's within yourself, even if you are that person and you're obedient to your own good nature, then there isn't any level of humanity beyond that level of excellence. But that's why a lot of times you see these pictures, you see the picture of the shepherd and the sheep, and it has this reference to the messengers of God and their followers, because that is the ultimate situation, is to have excellent leadership and obedient, loyal followers of that leadership. But today we're on this. It's this kick of not wanting any leadership. This kick of being independent, which is just a complete oxymoron, because today everybody behaves the same, right? So we know we have obedient behavior because we behave the same. We all want to look alike, dress alike, follow the same trends and all that. Yet we claim to be so independent. And honestly, if we were truly independent, you'd see a lot of original people walking around, a lot of original, natural, unique, creative, talented people that don't mimic each other. So there's no way you're going to get away from this this behavior of obedience because it is God given, and as much as we may hate it for whatever reason, it's there, and you need to guide it. And it's really rare to see exceptional, original people these days. That's why everything is being dubbed, everything is being duplicated. We don't hear anything that's original from anyone. And it's getting worse. I'm starting to play old music. I don't even want to hear any new renditions of anything at this point. I'm tired of it. I want some originality. But who knows? Maybe God has a plan that includes recreating original people, and I believe that, and I hope that I'm patient enough, and hopefully I'm even here to see it. But yeah, we've learned to hate the word obedience. We've learned to hate to be called, a sheep or have any likeness to that, and a lot of that's because of trauma. We when we did listen, something terrible happened when we were trying to be loyal and honest and all of that. We got devoured. We got taken advantage of. But you can't lose your good nature. You should always be trying to hold on to your obedience. And we've got to stop looking at the word like it's a curse word. It's not a curse word. It's a part of your nature. Okay? It's a part of who you are. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. But what has happened in the religious communities? Let's talk about that. What's happened in the religious communities in terms of obedience and following a leader? Same thing. You go in, you're all full open hearted, wanting to accept the faith and all of that. And then some so-called leader gives you some information and you end up following them, and you're all on the wrong track. You're marrying the wrong person. Nobody's there to support you, or you're off to the left somewhere, or you don't even understand, what you're doing, but you're doing it. You get into rituals and things. You don't even know what it's for, what it's doing for you. And you're just doing it, and you're showing your kid how to do it, and they're looking at you crazy. And, what is happening, with the religious communities and leadership and obedience? It's a hot mess. What has happened in the African American community? Hating to have someone that looks like you over you, right? What is that? What has happened? And is that going to be the case? Because, as much as we like to talk about getting together and having Black communities and these different things, we don't need to talk about any of that until we deal with the elephant in the room. Okay? And personally, as a business owner, I can tell you right now, it's a problem. It is a problem. It's no longer about because you've experienced, because you've studied, because you know more, you should be leader. This is out of the window at this point, because you're the parent and you only gave birth to the person. You only gave them everything that they ever needed to survive, but you're not qualified. You're not qualified to lead. That's where we're at, guys. That's what's going on. Look at the school system in the classroom. This is another leadership situation where you have followers that are obedient. I don't know how you can have a room full of children, and you're supposed to be the teacher, and now no one is listening to you, but you're supposed to show up every day and do your job. Not only that, you're fighting with the parents. If you've talked to teachers, talk to some of the teachers. If you have any friends that are teachers, I just feel so sorry for them, because these kids are being raised terribly, and it's a shame. I mean, it's not only leading to the fall of religion, it's leading to this lack of wanting leadership, this lack of wanting to be obedient to anyone, is leading to the downfall of the family life. And nobody wants to be wrong, right? Nobody wants to be wrong. God forbid that you're actually wrong about something in a conversation, and that's something I think, it's on the rise, and we're going to have to start checking ourselves, because that is actually habitual. When you're one of those people that constantly defending yourself, even if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're defending yourself. Stop. You got to stop yourself because it's habitual. And you'll find that people that you know that are like that, right? You'll say, well, they always think they're right. Those people have a problem. It's a habitual thing. And sometimes they're doing it and they don't even mean to do it. They can't stop themselves. And, sometimes it escalates to becoming deaf, actually. These are people that end up, you could be in a conversation with them, making an entire point. But in their mind, this is how much they don't want to follow any leadership or have any level of obedience. In their mind, they're holding on to a thought for dear life, and it has nothing to do with what you've said to them. And so when they finally get the thought out to you, you're like, you didn't hear anything that I said. And literally, they did not. They have become literally deaf to being able to have a mutual conversation. This is the side effect. These are side effects of our newfound hatred for leadership and our newfound hatred for obedience. It's almost like you don't ever want anyone to know that you've been obedient, that you actually listened to someone. I don't know. It's a part of the whole individuality plague or something. But it is a total. It's just a total mess. It's a total mess. So let's move on. So on another note, when we're talking about sheep, we're talking about this obedient nature. There are a lot of conversations coming up now on social media about women being obedient. And so, I wanted to take some time to do some research on this, this idea of the woman being like cattle once upon a time, the women being like sheep and being compared to this animal that's supposed to be loyal and obedient and shy and all of these things. And so I kind of wanted to know, like, how did we become associated with this and with cattle? So I did take a look. I will share some of it with you. One of the things is that, again, the sheep nature is that of a consumer, right? A consumer, right? So women are consumers. We are probably, well, no, we're not going to say probably. We're definitely more so consumers than men. We consume a lot more than they do, right? They're trying to catch up, but I don't think they're going to make it. Not the way that we like to consume, right? So this is one thing. So I'm wondering, okay, maybe that was one affiliation that made this thing come out about women being like sheep or like cattle. This idea of not teaching women, right? This is in some countries today, but very prevalent centuries ago, not even centuries ago, but very prevalent, and maybe even, like I said, some places today, we know it's a real shame. But when you're not allowed to be educated is a form of consumption. What are you left to do? There's nothing else to do but shop or consume whatever's put in front of you, basically whatever you were allowed to consume. Right, and that's definitely oppression. That's a form of oppression. But as the consumer, well, check this out, just listen. As the consumer, you end up becoming the decorator, right? So what do I mean by that? Decorating the fridge with food, decorating the house, your wardrobe, your jewelry, goods, whatever. And out of that came this idea that women, this association with women and trinkets. Trinkets is an old word that nobody uses anymore, but this is the word that they used to use, and you'd always see it associated with women. It's in the scriptures, it's in old books. But the owners of the trinkets, right? The one who organizes and distributes accessories, right? One of the things that I shared earlier was that sheep have an association with spoils or abundance, the excess, right? The woman being the one that organizes and distributes the excess, whatever it may be, right? So this is also found internally and emotionally. If you think about it, the woman is the one that decorates the insides, right? Whether it's the emotions, we decorate the emotions. Okay, we know we've yes. Again, men are they're trying to get in there and they're trying to they're trying to they're trying to become a little more emotional, which is what we want them to do. But please don't get too emotional. We don't need two emotional people walking around the house. Get a hold of yourself. I don't know. I feel the need to say that because I think something's going on here where there's this level of sensitivity that men have now that I've never seen before. So I'm joking, but I'm serious. Let's get a hold of ourselves. Women are designed this way. We have cycles. We have an emotional connection that men do not have, right? But this character, it allows us to decorate the emotions, the thoughts. Not just to make them beautiful, but to add to them, right? Another thing, that maybe associated women with this specific nature is that women were called and seen as cargo, as booty, as spoils, right? Themselves, women were actually seen this way. But I can see it in a very barbaric world. I can see where you would pretty much take a human female woman out of her nature and make her more like the sheep. So no, I get where it comes from. I'm so glad we're not there anymore. But at the same time, there's something beautiful about it, right? There's something beautiful about this nature of obedience, and there's something beautiful about being a woman and being more prone to this nature. Sure, I'm sure some of you completely disagree. Fine, you don't have to agree that women tend to be more obedient than men, but um, I think if you were being honest with yourself, that you would agree. But there's power in this position, right? There's definitely it. Wait, let me back up. I think you would agree if we were talking about the majority. If you're just thinking about your individual self, of course there are exceptions to the rule. And then there's the question of what is obedience, and we'll talk about that too in a second. But I wanted to bring up that there is power in this position, right? What would happen if women, really honed in on this unique, this beautiful ability that we have in terms of being loyal, in terms of being obedient to the right type of guidance, And I'm not talking about a man. I'm not talking about a pastor. I'm not talking about an imam. I'm talking about the right kind of guidance, and it can come from anywhere, right? It can come from anywhere. You have to turn your brain on first to make sure that you're using your ability to decipher and to make decisions, not just blindly consuming information and things without thinking about it. So I'm saying, what if we started really thinking and being very selective, so that we can so that we can enhance this natural loyalty that we have. If you have any young teenage daughters, and you're paying attention to them, there is a pureness and a loyalty that they have that makes you afraid of who they may get with, because you see it in them. You see this thing in them, this good, pure, what do I want to call it? It's like it's a vulnerability. It's a vulnerability, and it's in the essence of that loyalty. It lives in that obedient nature. It's in that same family, is what I'm trying to say. So if you have a teenage girl or a young girl in your as a daughter, granddaughter, whatever, what have you, then you know what I'm talking about. It's real, it's true, and it's something that you want to protect, and you want them to protect for themselves. But I don't know. I kind of feel like this world is so ready to snatch that away from them in any way that it can, and it's disturbing to my soul. I wish there were more emphasis on it, more we could do about it, but I do worry about that for young women. But yeah, so back to what if we honed in on this and really saw it as an opportunity to nurture the internal order of things, right? The internal order of things. And I say internal order because that is a role that we play naturally as well. This is something that a woman will do without anybody telling her. The way that we are built, this natural role that we have of being able to multitask and organize and all those things like that. That's part of the internal order, and with that there lives trust, loyalty, love. All of that is kind of mixed in and blended in there together. And it brings up in my mind, when I talk like this, I always hope that that people don't misunderstand. I mean, if you know me, then you won't misunderstand. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to give anyone the idea that this is the role that the only role women play, or that we're not completely capable of mastering these things externally or on the outside, or doing what a man does, quote unquote. And I know the conversation always goes there, and I'm always like, do people want to listen, or do they want to just resort to that ridiculous conversation all the time so that we don't achieve anything? So hopefully you can focus a little bit. We can kind of hone in on something without having to have the disclaimer, the role disclaimer that we seem to have in every conversation now. But this internal order, it's not just within yourself. It's not just in the home. It's also wherever there's organization. When we go into the work environment, that place becomes a home for us. Listen, if you ever work with women, a group of women on a project, right? Serious women, then the job is going to get done, and we're going to cross every T and dot every I. Right. So anybody that has ever thought about women being in the home, and that's our natural role. And no, the home is an extension. It's not just the house you live in. OK, and I'm going to do a whole talk about that. Hopefully you'll be around to hear about it. But I've done some research on that as well. Once you start talking about the home outside of home, nobody want to listen to you. Because they want it to be just in the house. I don't know. Some of these people kill me. But I want to take just a second to clarify what it is to be an obedient wife, a submissive wife. And I'm saying that and I'm smiling because I already know what's on your mind. I already know the craziness that some of you might be thinking. But stop being afraid of the word obedient. Stop being afraid of it. You're only afraid of it because of whatever's leading, whoever's guiding you, whatever leadership is for you. You probably have some trauma. But I'm going to clarify what that looks like. I consider myself an obedient wife. Okay? I consider myself an obedient wife. But my definition of obedience, maybe it differs from yours. I don't know. But I'm not afraid of the word obedient. I'm not afraid to say that I'm an obedient wife. None of that. Doesn't bother me at all. But it's simple. Number one, okay? Don't be argumentative out of spite. We do it all the time as women, just because we don't want to be wrong, or just because, you don't have to be argumentative out of spite. There's a time to be argumentative, and you need to select and choose when you want to be argumentative. That's one major rule to bring up some of your obedience. Okay, you don't have to be argumentative all the time and out of spite. It's okay to be wrong. Okay, it's okay to be wrong. If you're a leader like me, I'm a leader. I've been a leader all my life, meaning I've been put in charge in leadership roles and just about everything that I've done. And you have to be right so often that you don't want to be wrong. And you have to check yourself, and you have to realize that you're only human and you're going to be wrong. All right. If this is the man you plan on staying with, then why try to be right all the time? Right? Why try to be right all the time? This is not a competition. Be more cooperative than you are rejective. Be more cooperative than you are rejective. Try to see these things once you get married. These things, after you've been married so long, you kind of just days go by and you're doing this crazy stuff. You behave in these ways, and it's just become habitual. So you have to literally stop and ask yourself, am I more cooperative than I am rejective? Now, excuse me, I have to say this because some of these brothers have the word cooperative wrong. They think cooperative means that you're going to do what they say. The word is cooperative. It means two. It means two people, but working together, right? Not just your way. So being more cooperative than you are rejected. And here's the last one. This is the big secret weapon. This is something that all women need to know. Just share it with your daughters, share it with your friends. But I'm serious. Listen, this is my final one that I want to give. You want to find something regular and reliable to do that they can count on just for them. Something regular and reliable that you do that they can count on, but it's just for them. For some, it could be anything, but for some, it might be cooking. Like even if your kids ain't home, he knows you're going to cook. But it could be anything. It could be anything. Make it a ritual, something that he can expect for, that's special. Those little things go a long, long way in a marriage, right? They go a long, long way. These things, they're not going to work if you got one foot out the door, you don't plan on staying, those kind of things. But if this is going to be the person you're going to be with, you have to work on these things. And it's important that you do that. And, just for the record, men don't typically want you to do everything they say unless they've been abused or have experienced some sort of trauma. So if you're with someone that's behaving like that or that has that mindset, they probably need some sort of counseling. And I'm going to say to the men, you be careful what you ask for, because if you end up looking for one of these wives that are obedient, that means you're going to have a child on your hands, right? So if you're a grown man, you should want a grown woman, not a child or some person that's just going to follow your lead and follow you around. But yeah, I mean, we gotta grow up a little bit more. So I'm going to wrap up this episode. So to remind you of just a couple things before we leave, because we talked about so much. This sheep nature, right? These are people that behave in a group herd mentality, without aggression, without, pushback, anything like that. Now, it's a beautiful nature, as we have discussed. But it has to be guarded. It has to be guided and guarded. Okay? It has to be guided and guarded. This nature is actually the best part of us. To have this nature is to have the best part of yourself intact. And, typically that's why when you hear someone say obedience, you'll hear the word God come up right away, because they want to make sure you understand that they're not being obedient to you. They're being obedient to God. But it's okay to be obedient to a person if they're protecting you, if they have a history of protecting you, and you trust them, you have loyalty and trust with them, because that might be, the way that you're guided by that person who's like a messenger. That person could be the what do you call it? The middleman. Right? Sometimes you need guidance. All the time you need guidance, right? So that concludes this episode 1. I want you to make sure that you tune in, subscribe right now, and get ready for episode 2. That's going to be coming out very shortly. Subscribe and share. Thank you so much. Until next time.